My initial attempts with this playthrough challenge was to create a low intelligence character and see how far I could get through the game without having any useful skills, besides my character's natural good looks. I then decided to add on a pacifist run as well. We start the game by busting out your mother's stomach and being born. We then told to enter a name. I was going to use the name of a female friend, but then I remembered I didn't have any and had to look up a name that would fit the intelligence level of my character. Next, I spent time creating the most beautiful female character that I could. Next, I allocated my special points. I decided to go with an incredibly low intelligence but charismatic character based off of the stereotypical stereotype of the dumb attractive blonde that usually has no brains but lots of friends. I also put points into agility and endurance due to the fact that I figured somebody that looked physically attractive would most likely undertake some form of exercise, usually gymnastics or something of the sort, giving them agility and endurance and finally maxing out luck. Which, now that I'm writing the script, I'm having two minds about. On one hand, she's really lucky that she's so attractive, and on the other hand, she's incredibly unlucky that her brain no works so good. Skipping past the rest of the boring tutorial introduction, we end up using our wily charm to convince Mr. Broch to take the goat for us, allowing us to tag which skills we want to be proficient in. I wanted to go for a non-lethal one, but I also wanted to pick skills that I deem appropriate to my character. For example, barter and speech. For my last one, I wasn't particularly too sure about. I picked sneak. Frankly, I don't think it makes all that much sense that somebody that would naturally be loud and the centre of attention makes much sense. However, I had to pick a third skill to tag, so I went with sneak as it's one of the few that fit into the low intelligence pacifist bracket. We're then thrown into the final time skip and we are woken by a martyr, telling us that our dad has left the vault and that we have to also escape the vault to go find him. I refused the gun and decided to leave. The first mistake my character made, thinking that Officer Kendall was her friend. Unfortunately, once Officer Kendall had finished killing roaches, he decided to kick my ass. So I ran. Butch then pulls me off to the side and asks me to save his mother from roaches because he's too much of a cow to do it himself. I tell him no and he calls me a coward in return.
You're a real bastard, you know that?
I get lucky and find the overseer's office door key. I unlock the door and then get double lucky and find the password to the overseer's terminal. With that done, I log into a PC for the first and last time, open the overseer's secret back passage and escape. We leave the cave and enter out into the harsh blowing sun as our eyes acclimatised to the outdoor sunlight and our vision returns to us. The wrecked and ruined wasteland appears before us. This is one of the few things in Fallout 3 that I think Bethesda did really well, and I still remember to this day seeing all of that for the first time back in 2008. And next we see signs and head to the local town of Megaton. We're welcomed by the local sheriff/mayor of the town. He gives us directions to the local pub Moriarty's, owned by Moriarty. We meet the man. I'm pretty sure he was trying to have intercourse with me.
You best wise up quick. Wouldn't want anyone taking advantage of you,
We managed to convince him to tell us where our dad is, and he tells us that he went to the local radio station.
He headed southeast into the city. You know, Galaxy News Radio. What there is of it.
So it's off to go into the city to look for our dad at an old radio station, GNR. Finally we make it to the metro after a long boring walk of nothing. As soon as I enter the metro, I'm attacked by mole rats. Whilst I run from the mole rats, I come across a locked gate with feral ghouls on the other side. Luckily I find a key in the nearby office. Unfortunately, not as lucky, I'm surrounded and attacked as soon as I open the gate. Breaking free, I manage to run past them before they can catch up. Unfortunately, I run straight into a bunch of super mutants. I juke and jive past them and into the arms of the Brotherhood of Steel. I let them handle and deal with all of the super mutants in the immediate area whilst I make my way to GNR. We eventually arrive at GNR, but then a super mutant behemoth attacks. Now usually at this part, you'd walk into the centre of the square to pick up a fat man launcher and wipe out the behemoth relatively quickly. Unfortunately, I'm a pacifist, which requires me to just sit and watch this fight play out against a few people that can't aim or shoot for shit, but can't die, and a giant that does massive damage and has massive amounts of health. More than once the behemoth was as sick of this fight as I was and tries to leave. After a few minutes of fighting, they finally kill it. We're allowed entry into the building and make a trip to go see 3 Dog.
I am 3 Dog. If you want to know more,
he knows where my dad is and wants something in return. Frankly, I don't care about that and I just want to know where my dad is. So I use my wily charms and convince him to tell me where to go. To Rivet City. He then insults me for not knowing about Rivet City, despite only being on the surface for 2 days.
You've never heard of Rivet City? Wow. Just Wow.
We leave and go for another long walk until we get to Rivet City. From there we head straight to the science lab and talk to Dr. Lee to find out where our father is. She said he went to the Jefferson Memorial. We get to the Jefferson Memorial and it's unfortunately filled with super mutants. Luckily I managed to pick up a stealth boy along the way. I sneak my way past the super mutants and into the rotunda where I find a holotape describing where exactly my father has gone to. We sneak out just as the stealth boy wears off and now we get to go on another long walking journey back to where we started, so that we can go into the Casey garage. After a long walk and dodging past several mole rats, we make it to Vault 112 proper. We're greeted by a friendly robot and told to get into our vault suit and then into a lounger. We enter the simulation, meet Betty and perform a series of tasks for her, such as make Timmy cry, break up a marriage with no proof whatsoever.
Did you honestly think you could skulk around with that whore and no one would see you?
Cause somebody to have an accident, and then simulate killing everybody. You and your dad are let out of the simulation. He tells you that he needed information on a magical MacGuffin known as the Gek. He tells you that you'll need to go back to Rivet City to contact Dr. Lee. We're told we need to go to the Jefferson Memorial to clear it out from the super mutants, so that the scientists can move in. It was at this point that I'd reached a dilemma. If I was playing a character with brains, I could have hacked the security system and let the turrets deal with the super mutants. No such luck, I'm afraid. At this point, my only choice was to hire somebody to do the killing. My hands are clean as long as I don't fire the gun.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
At this point, my only option was to hire Jericho. Unfortunately, he wants 1,000 caps to acquire his services. At this point in the game, I've managed to acquire a grand total of 87 caps from my adventures. So I did the only thing I could think of. The same thing anybody would do when they're low on funds in a town full of people that need help. I began stealing everything that wasn't nailed down. I pillaged, pilfered, plundered and procured my way across Megaton. Unfortunately, I had only managed to get 399 caps for my ill-gotten gains. So I had to do something so horrific, something no human should ever have to suffer the indignity of. I had to get a job. I did some jobs for Moira and for some of the other folks, but I soon got bored of that after only receiving 616 caps in total. I decided to go back to stealing, so I went to Rivet City, liberated some libations and sold them back to the people at big profit. Eventually I had enough to pay for Jericho's services. I collect Jericho and we head off for the Jefferson Memorial. I slowly watch Jericho's bad AI poorly fight his way through the super mutants. Eventually he manages to kill every single super mutant by himself. We reactivate Project Purity, the Enclave arrives somehow, despite being wiped out in Fallout 2. Our dad kills himself and Colonel Autumn, except he doesn't die for some reason, despite taking a high dose of radiation. Dr. Lee decides to bug out and just stands there flapping her arms at me. Once she's finished, we make our way to the secret escape tunnel, where we have to guide this bunch of nerds to the jocks. Unfortunately, we hit another bug in this fantastically well built game, and the Enclave have put up barriers that stops us from continuing on. After some jiggery-pokery, we make it to the Citadel. Dr. Lee shouts at Elder Lions and tells us that we need to get to Vault 87, as the vault is confirmed to have a Gek. After a long-ass trek to Little Lamplight, we meet some kids with the whole Lord of the Flies motif going on. The leader vehemently hates adults, but I call him a smelly butt and that's enough to instantly cure him of his prejudices.
Oh yeah? You must like having such a good-looking butt.
He lets us in and we try to enter Vault 87 through the front door. Unfortunately the door is broken and I lack the mental aptitude to fix the issue. So we're forced in through the back door. It's at this point I was lucky enough to pick up some stealth boys. So I sneak my way to the prison cell where I meet Forks, a supposed failed super mutant because he can talk, despite every super mutant being able to dictate in the previous games. We free Forks and he agrees to help us in killing all of these other super mutants and help us retrieve the Gek. We retrieve the Gek and on our way out of the vault we're knocked out by Colonel Autumn, who somehow didn't die, for some reason. He abducts us and takes us to the main Enclave base and interrogates us. Now, I believe that my character would just give them the code, being as unintelligent as they are. Unfortunately, that leads to a forced game over, so you're forced into being somewhat smart. Colonel Autumn is called away. You meet President John Henry Eden, and he tells you that he's lost control of Colonel Autumn and his men. He sends you off to purify the water with the FEV, because the FEV is now a do-it-all MacGuffin. He helps you escape, killing all of the Enclave soldiers along the way, and you make it back to the Citadel. Wherein Elder Lions and Daughter Lions are having an argument, in which Daughter is telling Elder that they can't afford to wait around, and Elder retorts with, "It's literally not possible right now."
To keep the Citadel fortified. We've been over this before, Sarah.
So we just wait until they decide we're next on the list? If the Pride goes in now, we might have a chance.
And if you fail, then what? The risk is not worth the reward. Then we must go at once. Still, we cannot afford to wait and see what happens. We must act now.
If the Enclave has the Gek, there's nothing stopping them from starting the Purifier. They'll figure out the code eventually.
I'm afraid you're right. We need to act now while we can.
Send the Pride in. We can do it. We can win this.
All right, Sarah. The Pride goes in. But I want them to have some extra firepower. Rothschild, is it ready?
We follow Optimus Prime to the Jefferson Memorial, where he destroys the force field, keeping us from entering the building. Once inside, I sneak my way to the rotunda, wherein Colonel Autumn lies in wait. I tell him we don't need to fight. He disagrees, and I disagree with his disagreeal. So I decide to sneak past him whilst he's fighting Daughter, and enter into the airlock, where I manage to sneakily activate both the airlock cycle and enter in the airlock at the same time, regardless of the consequences, completing the game and this low intelligence pacifist run.
And so it was that the lone wanderer ventured forth from Vault 101, intent on discovering the fate of a father who had once sacrificed the future of humanity for that of his only child. The capital wasteland proved a cruel, inhospitable place, and the lone wanderer ultimately surrendered to the vices that had claimed so many others. Selfishness, greed, cruelty. These were the values that guided a lost soul through countless trials and triumphs. But it was not until the end of this long road that the lone wanderer learned the true meaning of that greatest of virtues, sacrifice. Stepping into the irradiated control chamber of Project Purity, the child followed the example of the father, sacrificing life itself for the greater good of mankind. Sadly, when selected by the sinister president to be his instrument of annihilation, the Wanderer agreed. Humanity would be preserved, but only in its purest form. The waters of life flowed at last, but the virus contained within soon eradicated all those deemed unworthy of salvation. The capital wasteland, despite its progress, became a graveyard. So ends the story of the lone wanderer, who stepped through the great door of Vault 101 and into the annals of legend. But the tale of humanity will never come to a close, for the struggle of survival is a war without end. And war never changes.
Thanks for watching. Maybe you'd like to click on one of these videos for more. Alternatively, you could subscribe and check out my selection of guides, comical videos and co-op playthroughs. I recommend the Pokemon Crystal playthrough. It's very good if I do say so myself. Alternatively, you can give my brain a hit of dopamine by clicking the like button or leaving a comment. I could really use more dopamine.